He said she was dangerous, not because she carried a weapon, but because she held a microphone. Ray Charles admitted that legends like Aretha Franklin and Etta James were incredible. He called them bad, but he dropped a heavy truth. He said on any given night, none of them could touch her. Picture this. Her voice was not just a sound, it was a force. It hit you like a wave of heat. It mixed the Holy Ghost of the church with the grit of the blues. It gave you chills. It upset the church elders, but it made the world dance. Here is the deal. Regina King played her in the movie Ray. She had to rely on that powerful voice to find the character. Why? Because history tried to erase her. There was barely any information left. She was one of only 4 women Ray truly cared about. She started in Statesboro, Georgia, directing a church choir. She ended up carrying the soul of a legend. But the price of fame is high. And the higher you fly, the harder you fall. Who was the woman that made the genius of soul tremble? The story begins in the deep heat of the South. The date was March 13th, 1935. The place was Statesboro, Georgia. This was not a place of bright lights and big stages. It was a place of red clay roads and Sunday morning prayers. Margie Hendrix entered the world quietly, but she would not stay quiet for long. She discovered her gift at a very young age. It was a voice that did not sound like a child. It sounded like thunder wrapped in velvet. Most children played games in the street. Margie played notes on the piano. She did not just tinker with the keys, she mastered them. Picture a small church in Georgia. The wooden pews are hard. The air is thick and still. Then the music starts. By the time she was a teenager, Margie was not just singing in the choir, she was directing it. Imagine that. A young girl standing in front of grown men and women. She waved her hands. She told them when to rise and when to fall. She commanded the room. She demanded perfection. This was her training ground. The church taught her how to make people feel something. It taught her that a song is not just a melody, it is a spirit. But Statesboro was too small for a voice that big. Here is the deal. Margie had a hunger. She wanted more than the local church could give her. She heard stories about the North. She heard about a place where music floated out of every window. She made a choice. It was a brave choice. At the age of 18, she packed her bags. She left the red clay of Georgia behind. She moved to New York City. The city was loud. It was fast. It was dangerous. But Margie had family there. She moved in with her oldest sister, Lula. Margie did not go to New York to party. She went to work. She took singing lessons. She polished her craft. She wanted to turn that raw, church-grown power into something professional. She chased her dream with everything she had. Gravity pulls hardest when you are at the bottom. And Margie started at the bottom. She knocked on doors. She sang for anyone who would listen. Finally, a door opened. She signed a deal with Lamp Records. This was her big break, or so she thought. She entered a recording booth with a man named Jesse Stone. Jesse Stone was a legend. He knew how to make hits. He saw the fire in Margie. In 1954, Margie released her first singles. One was called Good Treatment. The other was called Every Time. She poured her heart into those microphones. She sang about love and pain. She used all the skills she learned in that Georgia church. She waited for the world to answer, but the world stayed silent. The records did not sell. The radio stations did not play them. The songs did not make any noise on the charts. Imagine the disappointment. She had left her home. She had worked day and night. She had signed a record deal, and nothing happened. Most people would quit right there. They would pack their bags and go back to Georgia. They would say the dream was too hard. But wait, it gets deeper. Jesse Stone did not give up on her. The records flopped, but he kept her on the label. He knew she had something special. He just needed to find the right place for it. At this same time, Jesse Stone was working with a girl group. They were called the Cookies. The Cookies were doing well. They had moved over to a bigger label called Atlantic Records. Atlantic Records was the major leagues. They were making a name for themselves. They were climbing the ladder. But fame brings trouble. One of the members of the Cookies had a falling out with Jesse Stone. We do not know the exact words they said. We just know the result. The relationship shattered. The singer left the group. Suddenly, there was an empty space. The Cookies needed a voice. They needed someone strong, They needed someone who could sing the roof off the building. Jesse Stone knew exactly who to call. He replaced the former member with Margie Hendrix. This was the moment everything changed. Margie stepped into the group. She brought her Statesboro soul to Atlantic Records. She started singing background vocals. She learned how to blend her voice with others. She learned how to support a lead singer. She did not know it yet, but this path was leading her straight to a man named Ray Charles. She was about to meet the genius who would change her life forever. She was about to find the fame she dreamed of, but she was also walking toward a fire that would burn brighter and hotter than she ever imagined. Margie had the voice of an angel, but soon she would sing the devil's music. The church girl from Georgia was ready for the spotlight, but was the spotlight ready for her? The silence was louder than the applause. She had tasted failure with her solo records. Now, she had a second chance. But here's the thing about second chances. They often come with a heavy price tag. Margie joined the Cookies. They stood behind the microphone. They waited for the music to start, and then the genius walked into the room. The moment Margie Hendrix stood behind that microphone, the chemistry changed. It was chemical. It was electric. Here is the deal. Ray Charles was already a star, but he was looking for something else. He was looking for a sound that did not exist yet. He wanted the raw power of Sunday morning worship, but he wanted to play it in a Saturday night juke joint. He found that sound in Margie Hendrix. When Margie joined the group, the Cookies transformed. They became the Raelettes. And Margie was not just a background singer. She was the spark that lit the fuse. Picture the scene. The year was 1958. The venue was packed. The air smelled of cigarette smoke and cheap perfume. The band started playing. The rhythm was low and dirty. It was the blues. But then the voices kicked in. Margie led the women. They did not sing soft, sweet harmonies. They wailed. They shouted. They used the same call and response style you heard in the Baptist church. Ray would sing a line. Margie would answer him. She did not back down. She challenged him. The source material tells us a heavy truth. Margie's voice was the reason Ray started mixing the blues and the gospel sound together. This was revolutionary. Today, we call it soul music, but back then, they called it blasphemy. The church community was upset. They said Ray was taking the Lord's music and giving it to the devil. They said you cannot mix the holy with the profane. But Margie did not care. Ray did not care. They knew they had struck gold. Her voice was described as a powerful, church-like sound. It gave you chills. It cut through the noise of the band. It demanded you listen. Regina King, who played Margie in the movie Ray, said it best. She had to rely on Margie's voice to guide her. That voice held pain. It held power. It held a history of struggle. Imagine the song Nighttime is the Right Time. This was their battlefield. The song starts slow. The beat is steady. Ray sings his verse. But then the song builds. It climbs higher and higher. Then Margie takes over. She screams. It is a primal sound. It is not pretty. It is real. She repeats the phrase baby over and over again. Each time she gets louder. Each time she gets more intense. It sounds like a woman fighting for her life. It sounds like a woman demanding to be loved. On stage, Ray and Margie were like two fighters in a ring. He pushed her. She pushed back harder. The energy was terrifying. It was beautiful. Gravity pulls hardest on the heavyweights. And they were heavyweights. The records started flying off the shelves. The money poured in. They were traveling the country. They were playing the biggest theaters. For a black woman from Statesboro, Georgia, this was the peak of the mountain. She was driving fast cars. She was wearing expensive furs. She was standing next to the genius of soul, and she was matching him note for note. Ray Charles admitted it himself. He listed the greats. He talked about Aretha Franklin. He talked about Gladys Knight. He talked about Etta James. He said those girls were bad. That means they were incredible. But then he dropped the hammer. He said on any given night, none of them could touch Margie. That is a massive statement. Ray Charles was a perfectionist. He did not give compliments easily. He fired people for missing a single beat, but he looked at Margie with awe. She was his muse. She was the fire in his engine. Without Margie Hendrix, the Ray Charles sound we know today would not exist. They broke barriers. They forced the world to listen to black music in a new way. They took the pain of the segregated South and turned it into art that everyone had to respect. The movie Ray won awards because it captured this heat. Jamie Foxx won the Oscar for Best Actor. He won at the Golden Globes. He won at the British Academy Film Awards. Why did the movie resonate so much? Because the story was real, the music was real, and the woman standing in the shadow of the genius was real. Margie had everything. She had the fame. She had the respect of the greatest musicians in the world. She had the love of the crowds. But fame is a tricky thing. It shines a bright light, but bright lights cast long shadows. While the world saw us smile, the shadows were growing. The chemistry between Ray and Margie was explosive on stage. But explosives are dangerous. They were mixing business with pleasure. They were mixing love with work. And they were living life in the fast lane. The higher you go, the thinner the air gets. Margie was breathing rare air. She was the queen of the Raelettes. She was the woman Ray feared because she was the only one who could out-sing him. But the party cannot last forever. The music eventually stops. And when the silence returns, you are left with your demons. Margie had conquered the church. She had conquered the charts. She had conquered the stage. But she was about to face a battle she could not sing her way out of. The curtain was coming down on the golden era, and the fall would be brutal. Here is the cold, hard truth. When you stand next to the sun, you eventually get burned. Margie Hendrix stood next to Ray Charles. For a few years, she shone just as bright as he did, maybe even brighter. But fire consumes everything it touches. Ray Charles admitted something that shocks people to this day. He listed the queens of soul. He talked about Aretha Franklin. He talked about Gladys Knight. He talked about Etta James. He called them bad. In the language of the streets, that means they were untouchable. They were royalty. But then Ray dropped his voice. He said on any given night, none of those legends could touch Margie. Picture that. Imagine being better than Aretha. Imagine having more fire than Etta. Imagine being the one voice that the genius of soul respected above all others. That kind of power is dangerous. It is heavy, and if you are not careful, it can crush you. Margie had the voice. She had the rhythm. She had the church-like sound that gave you chills. But she did not have the armor to protect herself from the world of fame. The source material tells us a heartbreaking fact. Years later, actress Regina King was hired to play Margie in the movie Ray. Regina King is a professional. She wanted to do her homework. She wanted to study Margie's life. She looked for interviews. She looked for footage. She looked for history. But she found almost nothing. Regina King said in an interview that there was not much information for her to go on. Think about that for a second. Margie was the woman Ray Charles feared. She was the woman he loved. She was the spark that created soul music. And yet, history had almost erased her. How does a woman so loud become so quiet? How does a star that big vanish into the dark? Here's the deal. The fall did not happen all at once. It happened note by note. The source tells us that Margie's voice was the reason Ray started mixing the blues and the gospel. This was the unholy mix. It made them rich, it made them famous, but it also made them targets. The church community was upset. They saw a woman raised in a choir, a woman who used to direct the singers on Sunday morning, screaming the blues on Saturday night. The pressure was immense. Margie was walking a tightrope. On one side was the church, the place she came from. On the other side was Ray, the man she followed. The movie Ray shows the cracks forming. It shows the arguments. It shows the tension. Jamie Foxx won an Oscar for playing Ray. He showed the genius, but he also showed the darkness. And standing right in the middle of that darkness was Margie. She was one of only 4 women Ray truly cared about. The list was short. His mother, Aretha Robinson, his wife, Della Robinson, the singer Marianne Fisher, and Margie Hendrix. That is an exclusive club. To be in that club, you have to give a piece of your soul. Ray was a perfectionist. He demanded total loyalty. He demanded perfect pitch. Margie gave him everything she had. She gave him that powerful, church-like sound. She gave him the chills that the audience felt. But you can only scream for so long before your voice breaks. Regina King had to rely on the recordings to find Margie. She listened to the pain in the voice. She let the music guide her because the history books were empty. This is the tragedy of Margie Hendrix. She did not have the long career of Aretha Franklin. She did not have the massive hit records of Gladys Knight. She had a moment, a burning, blinding moment of greatness. She helped build the legend of Ray Charles. She helped invent a new genre of music. She took the spirit of Statesboro, Georgia, and threw it in the face of the world. But when the lights went down, she was left alone. The history books mention the falling out that Jesse Stone had with a member of the Cookies that opened the door for Margie. But the door swings both ways. Fame is a revolving door. You spin in, and if you are not lucky, you spin right back out. Margie's story serves as a warning. Talent is not enough. Being the best is not enough. Even having the love of a genius is not enough. You need to survive the machine. Margie Hendrix gave us the sound. She gave us the energy. She gave us the raw, unfiltered emotion that makes Nighttime is the Right Time a classic. But the silence that followed her life is louder than any song. Regina King brought her back to life for a moment on the screen. She reminded us of the woman who could outsing the best of them. She reminded us of the woman Ray Charles truly respected. But we are left with a question. Why did we let her be forgotten? Why was there not much information left? Maybe it is because she gave too much. She poured everything into the microphone. She left nothing for herself. She was the underdog who climbed to the top of the mountain. She looked down at the world. She made the genius tremble, but gravity always wins. The music fades. The crowd goes home. And the girl from Statesboro, Georgia, became a ghost in the liner notes of history. She shattered the glass ceiling of what a black woman could do on stage, but she was cut by the falling shards. Her legacy is not in the interviews she gave, because there are none. Her legacy is not in the books written about her, because they do not exist. Her legacy is in the groove. It is in the way Ray screams her name on the record. It is in the chills that she gives you 60 years later. She fell from the spotlight, but she landed in our souls. And that is a place where no one can erase you. The world heard the music. They danced to the beat, but they missed the war happening on the stage. Here is the deal. The media saw a hit machine. Ray Charles was the genius. He was the man on the magazine covers. He was the one taking the bows at the big award shows, but the public did not see the woman fueling the fire. Margie Hendrix stood just a few feet away from the spotlight. She was close enough to feel the heat, but she was far enough away to freeze in the shadow. The reaction to their new sound was split down the middle. On one side, you had the kids. They loved it. They felt the rhythm in their hips. They bought the records. They packed the dance halls from New York to Georgia. On the other side, you had the church. The elders were furious. They knew that sound. That was the sound of the Holy Ghost. That was the sound of Sunday morning worship. Margie took that holy sound. She wrapped it in a tight dress. She brought it into the smoke-filled clubs. She sang it for men who were drinking and gambling. To the religious community, this was a betrayal. They said she sold her soul for a hit record. But wait, it gets deeper. The hypocrisy of fame is a cruel thing. The world loved the song Nighttime is the Right Time. They loved the scream. They loved the passion. But they did not love the woman enough to write down her story. Regina King discovered this painful truth years later. She signed on to play Margie in the movie Ray. She went looking for the history. She dug through the archives. She wanted to know who Margie really was. She found empty pages. There were no long interviews. There were no biographies. The reporters of the 1950s and 60s did not care about the backup singer. They only cared about the star. Regina King said she had to rely on the voice itself. She put on the headphones. She listened to the cracks in Margie's voice. She listened to the raw power. That was the only map she had. Margie Hendrix became a ghost while she was still alive. Picture the scene. Ray Charles is getting praised by the world. He is winning awards. He is called a pioneer. Meanwhile, Margie is fighting for air. She tried to make it on her own. Back in 1954, she released solo singles. She put out Good Treatment. She put out Every Time. These were good songs. She sang them with her whole heart. But the public was cold. The records did not sell. The radio stations went silent. The world told her a hard truth. They loved her voice, but only when it was behind Ray. That realization breaks people. Ray Charles knew the truth. He admitted it later. He looked at the legends of the industry. He looked at Aretha Franklin. He looked at Etta James. He told the world that Margie was better. He said on any given night, she could sing circles around them. But the history books do not care about any given night. They care about the name on the marquee. The aftermath of their run was bittersweet. The music changed the world. It broke down racial barriers. It created soul music. But Margie paid the price. She gave the music her church roots. She gave Ray her fire. And in return, history largely forgot her name. Regina King brought her back for a moment. She showed us the woman who refused to back down. She showed us the woman who made the genius work harder. But when the movie credits rolled, the reality set in. Margie Hendrix is the definition of the unsung hero. She is the voice that gives you chills. She is the scream that wakes you up. But she is also the warning. You can be the best in the world. You can be better than Aretha. You can be better than Gladys. But if you do not own the spotlight, the darkness will eventually swallow you whole. The world kept dancing. The records kept spinning. But the woman who started the fire slowly faded away. The silence she left behind is the loudest sound of all. The music stopped long ago. The tour bus parked for the last time, but the feeling remains. Margie Hendrix left us with a mystery. She came from the red clay of Statesboro, Georgia. She conquered the church choir. She conquered the biggest stages in the world. And then she slipped away into the quiet. But here is the deal. You cannot kill energy. You can only transform it. Margie transformed the world of music. She did not just sing background for Ray Charles. She was the fuel in his tank. When you hear the raw, screaming emotion of soul music today, you are hearing Margie. She broke the rules. She took the Holy Spirit of the gospel and mixed it with the grit of the blues. People said it was wrong. They said it was unholy. But Margie proved them wrong. She proved that pain sounds the same in a church pew as it does in a nightclub. Ray Charles told the truth. He admitted that the biggest names in history could not touch her. He put Margie above Aretha Franklin. He put her above Etta James. That is not just a compliment, that is a coronation. Regina King played the role perfectly in the movie Ray. She had to search for the character because the history books were empty, but she found the truth in the recordings. She found a woman who refused to be small. Most people measure success by trophies. They look for gold records on the wall. They look for long biographies in the library. But Margie Hendrix has a different kind of legacy. Her legacy is in the groove. It is in the chills you feel when the song Nighttime is the Right Time plays. That scream is not acting. That is real life. That is a woman fighting to be heard. Gravity pulls us all down eventually, but some voices fly too high to be caught. Margie gave everything she had to the music. She lived hard. She loved hard. And she sang until she had nothing left to give. The industry might have forgotten to write down her story, but the music remembers everything. We remember the girl who made the genius tremble. We remember the voice that could not be tamed. Some stories end without closure, but dignity doesn't need applause. What do you think about the woman who outsang the legends? Do you think Margie gets the respect she earned? Let us know in the comments below. We want to hear from you.